Welcome to Homestead Reptile. Today on Morph History, we're going over flames, harlequins, and XXs and extremes. Like and subscribe. So this example right here is of a flame. So flames were one of the first morphs that are recognized in crested geckos that did not come from a wild collected geckos. This is a quote from the Rhactodactylus. We did not find a single representation of the fire morph in the wild geckos first collected. Fire pattern crested geckos appeared in the U.S. market in the late 1955. So a flame is an example right here. It's a polygenic morph. All of these are polygenic morphs. They're all connected to each other. So a flame is just an animal with that dorsal pattern, that flame-looking pattern, and a little bit of side patterning. So this is the beginning stage of your harlequins, your extreme harlequins, and your XXs. This lovely lady is an example of a harlequin. You can see that flame patterning still on that dorsal. That's the beginning. And now we can see that side patterning. You can see how these animals have been selectively bred to have more side patterning. So this girl is just a harlequin. So what's the difference between a harlequin and an XX and an extreme? So the difference between this harlequin and, say, an extreme, that she doesn't have enough side patterning. So she doesn't have enough patterning. That patterning to be an extreme needs to be at least 80% of that pattern needs to be up. Needs to be on the laterals. And this is also an example of a harlequin. So this one is not as defined as the other one. It's almost more compressed down there. And it's compressed because this guy is partially pinned. So that pinning is pushing that pattern down. So that's an example of what pin does to a lot of animals. It pushes pattern down. Instead of being more vertical, it's pushed it down. But this is also an example of a harlequin. You can see that flame type of pattern and the harlequin markings. But this is an example of a harlequin, and it cannot be an extreme unless it has 80% pattern. So this is an example of an XX. So the difference between an XX and extreme is just XXs have broken dorsals to allow that pattern to move more upright. So I would say this animal has 80% of the pattern is patterned. It's getting more white. It's eating up that pattern, and this is still a very young animal. So it will still go through a lot of changes, only being 14 grams. Now, again, this is just from the original one was the flame, to a harlequin, to an extreme, to an XX. So this is the pinnacle of flame. This animal right here, this patterning. So this is the pinnacle, and this is an example of just line breeding and selecting for more and more pattern over time, because all of these traits are related to each other. All of them are related to each other. It's a polygenic trait. Poly meaning multiple. Multiple traits are on hand to make this animal. They're a lovely, fun project to work with if you really enjoy harlequins, extremes, and even the simple flame. Flames are still beautiful in their own way. I really like this little dark flame that I have, but I also really love this high contrast XX lily white. There's a lot to love with both morphs. These morphs are perfectly healthy. I have never heard of anything funky with the morph. It's a healthy morph. It's just a line bred trait. There's not a lot of inbreeding at all with it because there just isn't. It's been in the hobby for a really long time. There's lots of flames, there's lots of harlequins, and there's lots of extremes, and there's lots of XXs. You can see that patterning. You can see how it's pushing up and it's getting rid of that dark, and that would be more of the lily white with the white gene. But again, it's a great morph to work with. They're a lot of fun, and it is an example of line breeding at its best. I hope this video was informative. Like and subscribe.